Required minimum distributions. What are they? How do they affect your tax situation? How can they hurt your children whenever you're gone? And is there a way to avoid them? Today on Watts on Wealth Takeover. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Matt Dean, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Jeremy Zicafus. How are you, Jeremy?
Doing great. Glad to be here. And we're talking about required minimum distribution.
Sure are.
Those RMDs. Matt, what the heck are required minimum distributions?
Well, that's a great question. Anybody that has a tax-deferred retirement savings account, it's an IRA, it's a 401k, it's a 403b. We all know these and are very familiar with them. Whenever you add money to those buckets, you're actually not paying taxes on that money. You're kicking the tax can down the road. And whenever you enter retirement and make withdrawals from those accounts to supplement your income, all of that is going to be taxable to you. Unless it is in the Roth bucket. Sometimes we see that, but most people, they've got their savings in the pre-tax bucket. So what is a required minimum distribution? It typically happens at your age 73 or age 75. It depends on the year that you were born, but it's when Uncle Sam notifies you and says, "Hey, Jeremy, remember me, your favorite Uncle Sam?"
Oh.
Well, I bet you also remember all those years that you spent saving up for your retirement in that pre-tax bucket.
I did really good. I saved up $1 million.
Well,
That's all mine, right?
Well, no. In fact, as your Uncle Sam, some of that money is mine, and I've still got to tax you on it. It's been 4 decades since you've been taxed on that money. And by the way, I would like to be paid in installments, and that's what a required minimum distribution is.
Got it. So essentially, you get to a point where you lose control of your different tax-deferred accounts because the government at that point gets to choose when you take money out, how much you take out, and what tax rate you pay on those funds. Because when you are taking out those required minimum distributions, it is taxed at your ordinary income tax rates. And so whether you need the funds or not,
That's exactly right.
you have to take it out. So if let's say you have a pension or Social Security, and that covers all of your monthly bills, you don't need to touch your investments. Your plan is to, I want to leave my investments to my kids or to a charity or my church, something like that. Well, eventually when, you reach 73 or 75, you're gonna have to, pay the piper. You got to start paying the government what, is theirs, because you essentially, I don't think people really understood what they did when they put money into their 401ks.
Definitely not.
Because really, whether you knew it or not, you kind of made a bet. You made a bet that, tax rates in the future are going to be lower than they are today. Because when you put that money in now, as you're working, you're getting a tax deduction. It's saying that, later down the road, when I need to pull those funds out, I'll be in a lower tax bracket because I'm retired, I'm not working, and I'll be able to just pull those dollars out and pay less taxes. Is that what we typically see, Matt?
Yeah, typically speaking, but required minimum distributions, like you said, is when folks in retirement start to lose control over those retirement savings accounts. And the problem can turn into a big snowball rolling down a mountain. It picks up a lot of steam and a lot of momentum. Here's just an example. If you have a tax-deferred retirement account that's doing well, maybe it's invested in the stock market and it's earning well for you in any given year, well, that balance is going to grow. But the way your RMD is calculated, the federal government is going to ask you to shave some money out of that account depending on how old you are. They come up with a percentage based on your life expectancy. So for most folks, that first portion that they have to take out, it's about 3.8%, somewhere in there, that they have to withdraw and pay the taxes on. And then the next year, your IRA is a little bit bigger thanks to that growth, and you're a little bit older and that proportion grows. So we have a problem with double compounding. The bucket gets bigger that you're taking out of, you're getting older and required to pay more and more taxes, and it can get so bad that it can push you into a higher tax bracket in retirement. Now, Jeremy, one of the questions that we get asked all the time is what happens when an IRA doesn't get spent all the way and it gets inherited by a beneficiary, an heir, a member of the family? How do those RMDs work for those inherited accounts?
Well, goodness. So that's the thing. Not only are you going to be forced to have to deal with this problem at some point and pay those taxes, but if you don't get it all done yourself, that problem is going to trickle down to your heirs, whoever it is that you leave that to. And so most of the time we see when people leave an IRA to their kids, something like that, right now most people fall into what's called the 10-year rule. And what that means is whoever inherits that is going to have to pay the taxes and take out all the money within 10 years of inheriting the account. So, it's 2025 right now. Mm-hmm. If I were to inherit an IRA, I'd have to get that entire account depleted by 2035. Well, what does that do to me? Well, most of the time, that's going to cause taxes to raise for me, because when I pull those funds out of the inherited account that I just inherited,
that's taxable income.
It's still taxed as taxable income. And so it's a big thing that we actually see people, they don't necessarily always understand why it might be a good idea to do something like a Roth conversion, because there's ways to avoid required minimum distributions. And we actually just talked about Roth conversions and how they might be helpful for you. You can check that out in another video. But one of the things that you have to kind of think about is, okay, so let's say you're in your 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. And so you're in your 70s. You're starting to pay those required minimum distribution. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were to pass away and leave those funds to your kids, they're most likely going to be in their 40s, 50s?
Yeah.
So they're at their prime working years. They're probably making the most money they're ever going to make in their life, which means they're probably going to be in the highest tax bracket they're ever going to be in their life. And so a lot of times I run into people saying, well, I shouldn't be working on these Roth conversions because it doesn't really matter, and my kids can pay the taxes.
Yeah, the kids can pay the taxes.
They can pay the taxes. Well, whose money are they paying the taxes with? Yours. You're going to pay the taxes with your money, whether you're alive or when you pass away. And the thing is if you can, while you're living, even if you're already receiving your required minimum distributions, if you can start converting those over and paying the taxes voluntarily now at the 12%, even maybe the 22 or 24%, well, if your kids are working and they're in the 32 or 35% bracket, why would you make them pay more taxes on an account that's worth more also by that time because it's grown? It becomes a bigger issue. And it's funny because actually we have a gentleman every year. He's well into the required minimum distribution age, but he has a lot of tax-deferred money. And so this last year, even though he's receiving his required minimum distribution, he's saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and max out all the way up to the top of the 24% tax bracket because his kids are high earners and they're in those prime, those top earning years in their life. And so if he were to pass away, they're going to have to pay a lot more taxes than he will because they have to withdraw all those funds in 10 years. So think about that. If you leave $1 million to your kids, and let's say it doesn't grow a dime, let's say it stays the same amount to $1 million in an IRA, well, they have to take out $100,000 a year for 10 years and add that to their taxable income. I mean, ask yourself, if you had an additional $100,000 of income, taxable income, is that going to affect your tax bracket right now?
Or worst case scenario, let's say they have to take out less than $100,000 a year to keep the IRS happy, to keep them from breathing down their neck about this RMD issue. Let's say they only have to take out $20,000 or $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to come back to your kids and in the last day of the 10th year and say, this money has to come out. The balance has to go to zero. The taxes have to be paid. Worst case scenario, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional taxable income for the family.
In 1 year.
In 1 year.
And so I've seen that happen before where people didn't realize that they should have been taking some money out of those accounts during that 10-year period, because once you get to that 10th year, you have to take out the remainder, whatever is left, and it's all taxable income. So it could shoot you up into a higher tax bracket. If you're already retired yourself, I mean, who knows? That taxable income, it affects a lot of terrible things. Even if you are taking the required minimum distribution of your own funds, well, that increases your own tax bracket during your retirement. It causes Social Security to be taxed. It can cause you to pay more for Medicare. These are forced taxable events that happen. And so if you can find ways to avoid them, if you can sit down with a professional and talk about these different strategies to help eliminate required minimum distributions altogether, not only do you get to keep the money in your account if you don't need it, if it's in a Roth IRA, they don't have required minimum distributions. So all the money in a Roth, if you don't need it, you can just leave it in there. But if you do need it, you can take it out. Doesn't even show up on your tax return. Doesn't cause your Social Security to be taxed. Doesn't cause Medicare penalty.
Not taxable income.
Not taxable income. So I think those required minimum distributions are one of the most misunderstood and just unknown things that retirees face, because they made that bet all those years ago by putting money year after year after year in their taxable 401ks, unknowing that later down the road, taxes might increase. Or if your standard of living is the same, if you're living on $60,000 a year and when you get into retirement, you still want to live on $60,000 a year. I don't know too many people who want to retire and live on less. Wasn't the point of working all these years and building up this money so that we can retire and live the way we are now, or maybe even better, travel more, see the kids, go to Disneyland, do that home repair you finally wanted? So most of the time we see people are still wanting to live in that same standard of living. So instead of working and making $60,000 and paying the tax on that, it's, we're just going to take $60,000 out of our 401k. You're still taxed the same. It's still taxable income. And so we want to make sure that if it makes sense for you to get out of that, out of the way of that big tax train, how do we start accomplishing that so you aren't forced to pay those taxes later down the road when taxes might be higher?
Jeremy, one of the reasons why we love the tax-free bucket, Roth IRA, Roth 401k, anything with the word Roth in front of it, is whenever you reach your 70s, whether it's 73 or 75, you're not required to take money out of that account because you've already paid the taxes on it.
Correct.
It's just absolutely wonderful. And what happens to a Roth IRA or Roth 401k whenever it gets inherited, the 10-year rule still applies in this case, but you're not required to take money out throughout the 10-year period. Here's what you can do instead. You're allowed to let that inherited Roth grow for 10 years. And on the last day of the 10th year, after it's been growing tax-free for nearly a decade, all of it can be withdrawn 100% tax-free. And Jeremy and I would love to see how we can help impact, provide, and protect your family, especially in retirement. Follow the link right down below to wealthcarecorp.com and request a visit with Jeremy and I and see how we can get you the help that you need.